Hello, poodling arounders. I really hope you've been following my lead and poodling around some amazing places or sniffing out incredible experiences that make life richer and worth getting out of bed for. I also hope they've been filled with laughter and joy, even better when they are. On that note, today we're going to be focusing on something that I encountered during my PR work in Cumbria when working on behalf of one particular client. And this is a sport of hound trailing. Although this may be about hound dogs, it's got absolutely nothing to do with Elvis, I can assure you. It's actually a wonderful canine sport that takes place in Cumbria and which you really can't see anywhere else, but is well worth checking out if you get the opportunity. In a nutshell, it's all about wonderful dogs having a good old race with each other. Now, whilst I really enjoy watching this as a spectator, I thought it would be really good to know more about the sport, especially as, unless we really appreciate it and get more people involved, it might struggle to exist for future generations to enjoy. So, I've invited some experts to speak to me. My guests today are Hound Trailing Association Chairman Paul Airy, Vice Chairman Andy Horn, and Secretary Fiona Dixon, as well as Lee Wall, the Vice Chair of the Carlisle and Penrith area, and this hound owner who you're going to hear in a moment, Glenys Farron, who's been involved for over 50 years.
Hound trailing has changed enormously since I was first involved in the 1960s. I got involved with my dad as a child and got the bug right away. And my love of dogs and the sport became an obsession. Sadly, from seeing some 40 to 50 dogs racing fell and field, we have to settle for many less in each race now. Due to foot and mouth epidemic, the loss of dogs and members, and then add COVID to the problem, things got worse. But the ones who stayed in the sport have continued successfully to what we now know today.
Paul, we've just heard a really atmospheric summary of Glenys's hound trailing story, but please could you tell us what hound trailing is?
Yeah, well, hound trailing, it comes from the 1800s, where hounds were kept in villages, and there was competitive sport between the villages as to who had the fastest hounds, and it was called drag hunting. And then it's morphed away from foxhounds, and now it's nothing to do with fox hunting anymore. But they chase a scent over the fells, over moors and fells. A scent is put down by two trailers who put a mixture of aniseed and paraffin on a rag. They take a couple of pints of paraffin each, and they walk about 5 or 6 miles each. So that's the essence of it. That's the essence of hound trailing is competition between owners to have the best hound.
And just to pick up there, Paul, I mean, you mentioned both moors and fells. I think a lot of people who are listening will understand what a moor is. But a fell, if people don't know, it's kind of like a bit of a sort of mini mountain, isn't it? And it's quite rocky. The terrain's quite difficult. There's bracken and all sorts of hurdles on the way that I presume the dogs have to negotiate when they're running through the track and the trail.
That's correct, yes. The dogs are taught to jump walls, to jump fences. They're very agile and extremely keen, because obviously they want to do it. They're not forced to do it, because they go, they run 10 miles and nobody's following them or anything like that. They're just leashed off, and they follow the scent. They, over moorland, they can run about 20 miles per hour. When they go to, say, places like into the Lake District, such as Grasmere and Ambleside and what have you, people have visited those places, and Buttermere and things like that. Then the hounds run a lot, obviously, because slower, but they do go up and down the mountains, and they love what they're doing. They love racing one another, and when they get back to their owners, they're given a piece of something that they like to eat.
Well, that's good then. And Andy, sort of bring you in here. What sort of breed of dog is taking part in this kind of event?
It's an evolvement from a foxhound. Now they're a lot more agile, a lot more leaner, faster, and they're bred to endure the course of a long course. So typically a senior hound, which is a 2-year-old hound, will run between 25 and 40 minutes, covering roughly 10 miles. So it'll probably indicate how fast these hounds can travel. And the younger hounds, what we call pups, they run round about a 5-mile course, and it takes them from anywhere from 20 minutes to 30 minutes. So they're built for endurance. It's not something that's done once a week. We have trail meetings most nights of the week, apart from a Friday. So it's not uncommon for a hound to run 3 times a week, weekend, midweek, weekend again, and maybe even up to 4 times a week. But the hounds are bred for it. They love it. They're only happy when they're going to the hound trails. Winter months can be very long because obviously it's a resting period for them, and with them being such active dogs, the hounds can take a bit of keeping occupied through the winter months. So now they're a special breed, which have their own identification as a trail hound. And like any breeding with any dogs or hounds, we have bloodlines that we like to go to, and breeding is also an important part of hound trailing.
And you've intimated it at it there, but the hound trail meetings have different categories of race, don't they, for dogs at different stages of their development, I guess.
Yeah, so as with any sport, whether it be human or canine, everybody has different levels of ability. So we have different grades of hounds, right from our seniors, which are our champion hounds or our fastest hounds. And then it goes down the grades from a graded hound, which is slightly less grade than a senior, down to a maiden. Obviously, people who are familiar with racing terms, a maiden is a hound that hasn't won a race that season. When they win a maiden, they're actually, obviously, they then have to move up to the next grade. And it goes all the way down to what we call an open non-winner. So an open non-winner is for the hound that's never won a race in his life. So we do like to cater for every grade of hound, and hopefully that spreads the winning amongst the owners and trainers.
And do we know what the origins of this sport are? What's the history behind it?
It's kind of not really known when hound trailing began in Cumbria, but there is an initial results book that's dated 1856. But that was actually solely for an individual event, which is the Langham Common Riding Hound Trail that takes place annually on the last Friday of July. And they do record that in a results book.
Okay.
The first association was formed in 1906, and that's who we're representing, is the Hound Trailing Association, or the HTA. And there's some of the rules and trophies that are still in existence now. And then hound trailing went through a real boom period. So there was kind of halcyon days of hound trailing back in the early 30s. Some members then broke away and formed a separate association. That was in the Borders in southwest Scotland, and that was the Border Hound Trailing Association.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, due to the decline of the enthusiasm of hound trailing, the Border Association has subsequently folded and all come back to the strength of one association in Cumbria, just actually in early 2023.
Going back to where it started from, as Lee quite rightly said, it's back in the 1800s there. I've got a cup in front of me that's just come in, and this hound trail was held in Lowther Park on 30th of August 1901, just explaining as to how popular hound trailing was even before the association in 1906. And it was in honour of His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince of Germany and Prussia's visit. And this trophy was won by a Mr. Bowes, and his dog was called Champion. It was not just the miners of West Cumbria, but who were fantastic enthusiasts and people all over Cumbria and into Scotland, but also back in the day, a lot of the Lord Lonsdale and people like that were very interested in hound trailing.
And just to allude on what Paul and Lee said earlier on, it actually goes way back to 1763, and that the first recorded drag hunt stroke hound trail was actually on Newmarket Heath over a 4-mile course, and that was in 1763. So that's how far it goes back.
And Fiona, from an owner's point of view, what do you think the owners find so great about this sport?
I think it's a lot of the camaraderie and the social contacts coming together. Obviously, it's quite an expensive hobby to keep hounds. So people do like to win, but not everybody can win. Not everybody has a good hound. So I think a lot of people just enjoy the camaraderie, the social contacts, getting out and about in the countryside, meeting up with friends that are established right across the association. And the association stretches from down in South Cumbria, and now with the Border Association joining in with the HTA, we've got venues now right up to Langham and across into the northeast. So there's a lot of friendships built and established, and it keeps people entertained. And, we've got quite a few elderly members, older members that enjoy the company, and it gives them something to focus and, just gets them out and about, really.
Yeah, because I think, as Andy said, it's like 3 times a week. So, it can take up quite a bit of your social life, I could imagine. So maybe back to Lee, what was it that got you involved in the sport? And then we'll ask the others as well. But what personally got you involved in this sport?
So it's really kind of touching on what Fiona's just said there, Jane. It's a way of life, for a lot of people. It's a family sport, and I mean that in kind of 2 separate contexts. So family as in your close family and being born into hound trailing, but the overall community and family of the hound trailing fraternity as well, which kind of Fiona alluded to there, as well as that social gathering, the meeting in lovely places in the county that we're absolutely blessed with, the Lake District and Northumberland and Southwest Scotland. It's a fabulous place to be out and about in the summer months. My own personal involvement in hound trailing, I was born into hound trailing. My father had hounds based out of Carlisle and was involved in the Border Hound Trailing Association for all of his time that he trained hounds. My grandfather, a butcher out of Carlisle, he was also involved in hound trailings prior to that as well. So that, although my other siblings aren't involved in hound trailing, it was something that really stuck with me from a very young age. And, I was keen to go to the hound trails. I think I attended my first hound trail at a couple of weeks old, some 48 years ago. And there's that kind of heritage side of hound trailing, and with it being a very unique sport, but it's that wider community that hound trailing brings together of friends, and that extends to the farmers, the landowners, the people that we meet at the local sports and the bigger sports, your Grasmeres and Ambleside, people you only meet maybe once a year, and you have a crack, and they might ask whose dogs are doing best, so that they might have a bet, because we have licensed bookmakers at these events as well. So that's my personal kind of involvement in hound trailing and how I got into the sport as a young child, and then something that's in my blood and I can't shed off. I've tried to get out once or twice, but I keep being drawn back in, because I just inherently love the sport and the hounds and the people and the places.
Yeah. And what about you, Andy? Is it a similar story for you?
Yeah, very similar to Lee's. I'm currently on our 6th generation of hound trailers. So my grandson is the 6th generation to be interested in hound trailing. He's 8 years old. My great-grandfather, William Roper, he actually started the Border Hound Trailing Association in 1933. So it's just been just a way of life. I was going to hound trails when I was just about born, to be honest with you. It's gone through all my family. 2 sons are active members, both hound owners and helping to lay the trails as well. Myself, active member of the association. And yeah, Alan's our 6th generation. So that's how far it goes back for us.
And you, Paul, is it the same for you?
No, hound trailing wasn't in my family. I through contacts, I started going to the hound trails with some friends, and I made big friends. I got my name on a dog, and then eventually as the years passed, I got more and more involved, and I started my own kennel. So it's my story is slightly different. But now my daughter is extremely involved with hound trailing. She goes to all the hound trails and sips, catches dogs. And my granddaughter, she's very keen on going to the trails as well. So I think once it gets in the family, the excitement of going to the trails and running your dogs really is a great thing.
And Fiona, were you sort of generations back, or have you come into it fairly recently?
No, it goes back to my grandparents. My grandma used to take entries for Cockermouth and Workington area, as well as attending the major HTA trails and taking entries. And my granddad was a member of the Cockermouth and Workington area, was also on the executive committee and the international committee. And I just got involved with hound trailing through going with them. And like other people, once you get the bug, it's there. I haven't been one that's had lots of dogs like other people. I've had one dog in the 40-odd year that I've been involved with hound trailing. So I've more or less concentrated more on supporting the organisation of the hound trails. So I do a lot of judging, start the hounds, I time them, and do anything else that needs doing that other people can't really do because they might be actively involved in running the dogs and seeing to the dogs.
Well, it's great to know you don't have to have come from a family that's been in this for generations and can start afresh, because I guess that's really important for your association, isn't it? But how many dogs, those of you that have got dogs, how many would you typically be taking to an event?
I have 4 for next year, Jane. Yeah, generally rule of thumb, 2, 3 or 4, but we do have kennels such as the Fox Parks, who I'm hazarded to guess, I think they've got about 15 or 20
Gosh.
hounds. So we all like to see, as a promoter, Paul promotes, I promote, Fiona promotes. We all like to see the Fox Park van roll up because we know we're going to get plenty of runners. But I'll pass over to Lee and he'll explain how many he has in training.
I find myself in a different situation at the moment. I've none in training for next season, just due to circumstances. I live in the centre of Carlisle, and obviously housing the hounds and things, and with neighbours and other things is a challenge at times. So I keep quite a small kennel of hounds. I have one hound that's retired. We've had sort of generations of puppies off, so there's a litter expected in February time, which will be some further descendants of the dog that we have. So looking to take on pups and develop those for next season. But we've had upwards of 6 or 7 hounds in the kennel at any one time back in my father's day. But kind of challenging having that number of hounds, and like Fiona mentioned at the beginning, the costs associated with feeding them, travelling to the events, vet bills, and keeping them well and healthy as well is quite challenging. So
what will you be doing this season then? You'll still be turning up and supporting.
Yeah, and it's we need within the association to be able to continue. Look at Fiona's circumstances. So one hound in over 40 years of involvement, and those types of people, Fiona's parents, grandparents who've taken the entries at the event, enabling the events to take place. So arranging leave with farmers and landowners, walking round the events in advance to make sure that all of the trail and the route of the trail is protected for the hounds as well, and making it safe. Somebody who's on the gate to take money, somebody who sets the field out, somebody who arranges for a portaloo or for a snacks van or something to attend, sells raffle tickets, makes sure that everything goes to plan, arranges catches, arranges the judges, road scouts. There's all manner of things and things that go on behind the scenes. Applying to the local authorities for licensing and other bodies who allow us leave on the land. So that's probably what I'll be involved in more this year than actually actively. I'm sure there'll be people asking you to slip and catch hounds, but it's the involvement on the day of the racing and the prelude to the racing on those days in your area or in other areas to help out and make sure that the days go off as well as that they can.
And just to pick up on something you said, slip and catching. Can you sort of explain what that is for people who might not know what that is?
Yeah, certainly. So the slip is the big furore of all of the hounds lined up at the beginning of a race. All lined up, they have to be accounted for. So there's the correct number of hounds. They have to be individually marked. You have to make sure that all the hounds that are entered in that race are present. and that no hounds that aren't entered have accidentally been brought to the slip. So there's a lot of responsibility on those that are starting the trail when the trailer's walking in, pulling that aniseed and paraffin scent. So it's one of the biggest excitement factors of any trail is the slip. The owners, they're lining them up, the hounds baying, desperate to get on and do their work and be released. And then on the flip side of that, the catch is when the hounds are then finishing the trail at the other end of the course, usually in very close proximity to the slip, and then it's waiting to get advantage of a hound or the hounds coming in collectively to see which hounds are going to be successful in that race, and often some exciting finishes where there's a number of hounds racing to get over the line, where there's catches. We have a camera. We've got the technology to, if there's close finishes, to separate hounds, because the judge has a primary responsibility for making sure the correct hound is given and awarded the race. Because, like I say, we have licensed betting, so the punters and the bookmakers alike need to make sure that there's a correct process for award of the race with anybody that has a financial interest. And again, the whistling and shouting and waving of we're not permitted to wave towels. Back a number of years ago, people used to wave towels to attract the hounds, but for reasonable health and safety in a kind of a group, we precluded people from flapping towels, but people do kind of wave their buckets with containing treats for the hounds when they get in, some chicken or some tripe or something that they really enjoy, which is what spurs them hounds on to know that at the end of that race they can raise the game, raise their intensity to get in over the line in that first place and get a reward from their ecstatic owners.
Yeah, because I've only ever seen this at Grasmere, but I love that bit when the owners are getting really excited and there's the banging of the dog bowls, and it's just like a bit of drama, isn't it? A bit of theatre that goes on at that stage of the race. And I think the spectators also love that as well, don't they? Where would you begin with this? Where do you start to train a dog? What goes into it?
Basically, it's just learning the pup hound to follow the scent. So it starts with a very simple procedure of A to B over 100 metres where the hound can see you. The hound will then run into, obviously, the bait tin with a nice treat for them. You reward them. And then it's just an extension of that. So the following day you would go 200 metres, and then the following day you would go out of sight, encouraging the hound to then use its nose to find you rather than its sight. And then it's a very challenging process. A lot of people say the best time of the year is when they're training pups. I despise it, to be honest with you. I despise the disappointment, but this year's gone smoothly. So yeah, it's just it's an increment of time. So you go from 100 metres to 2 fields, to 3 fields, to 4 fields. And at this time of year, we just had a practice trail up on Shap, and there was other practice trails throughout the county, and we're up to about 8 or 9 minutes now. So yeah, it's just learning those hounds to follow that aniseed and paraffin, and they'll learn that at the end of that trail, they'll be rewarded with the treat. So it can be very disappointing. Some hounds don't take to it, like any animal. It's sometimes they don't take to it. They won't go. They can be timid. So yeah, it's an anxious time of the year. But yeah, you put a lot of time into the hounds, feeding them top grade feed, and then you get to the nitty gritty of starting them off, and sometimes it doesn't work out.
And Fiona, binoculars, and that's another great thing. When spectators turn up to these events, watching the owners with their binoculars trained on the hillside, because it is actually quite difficult to pick out the dogs, isn't it, when they're racing along? And I know that at Grasmere, you've sort of tried to get around that a bit by introducing some commentary, which seems to have worked really well. But could you tell us, sort of how difficult is it to spot the dog when it's on the hillside and you're the owner?
It can be quite difficult, but a lot of particularly the punters in particular, they make a point of being able to identify the dogs, obviously because they want to be able to put a successful bet on. And over the years, there's lots of the people are able to identify their own dogs. They can identify them from different markings. Over recent years, we've had a lot of white dogs that have had no markings. And even some of the owners have catched the wrong dogs when they've come in because they are so similar. There's no distinguishing features on the hounds. But we seem to have overcome that a little bit. I think we've got a lot of ginger and white pups coming through. So again, they might be a bit similar, but they do have some distinguishing features, different coloured markings on them. Most people, most owners know how their dog runs, and it might run in a particular way, or it might have a particular feature marking on it that they can recognise. And obviously it makes it more interesting if you can see the dogs when they're running. Some venues are better than others. Some venues, the dogs are just slipped out and then you don't see them till they're coming back on the finish. But other venues, such as Buttermere, for example, Gatesgarth, you get a good view of the dogs climbing right up onto the top of the fell and then dropping back down before they cross the road. And then you get a good view of them going around the basin before they come up onto the top and then they drop back down. So that makes it a bit more exciting, both for the owners and for the general public when they can actually see the dogs following the trail. And it's surprising how well they do follow the trail and how well they run the trail in such a short distance, such a short time.
And so when it comes to winning, Paul, what sort of prizes can people have if they're entering these events? Or is it more sort of the kudos of having a dog that's won the event that's important to people?
Yes, it's definitely the kudos. It's certainly not the financial gain. For a senior hound, the prize money for the first 6 hounds is £30, and it's split 4/10, 2/10, 1/10, 1/10, 1/10. So 4 threes. If you win the race, it's £12 or something that you would win. Second, you would be 6, and then 3, 3, 3. So it's definitely the kudos. At the end of the season, in going to the local hotel for a meal and a presentation night where you pick up cups and what have you. We are very lucky with several venues such as Ambleside Sports and a lot of the sportsing venues that the prize money there can be several £100s. And each year we have 5 HTA meetings. And those meetings, each trail is 160 or maybe £200 split between the 6 dogs. So, but on a general speaking, if you win, it's £10, £12 or £2 or £3. So it doesn't go a long way towards paying the petrol and the entrance money. But as we said, it's the taking part. It's not the financial gain that we go for.
I think the biggest kudos is with the seniors and the pups to win the championship. So that they'll run for points throughout the season, and those points accumulate at the end. And it is quite a special event when you win the championship. I think a lot of people look forward to trying to win the championship and still value that as quite an experience and a challenge.
And, what intrigues me is the names of these dogs, because I've noted that some kennels seemingly all call their dogs by some sort of name that distinguishes that they come from that kennel, and other dogs just seem to have quite normal names. What's your own approaches to that and the naming of your dogs? How do you go about it?
My first dog was called Meadow Moss, and I bought that as a 2-year-old from a friend. So all my dogs now were called Meadow Lassie, Meadow Jane, whatever names, whatever the pet name is. They're kept called Meadow, and then the pet name. It's just something that a lot of owners like to do.
And yeah, so following on from Paul, mine are all called Show. So Showstar, Showbiz, Showtime, Showstopper. Apart from when my grandson had an input last year and I had to call one Minecraft. So that booked the trend. Yeah, so I think a lot of people like to use it as well for breeding purposes. So, if there's a good meadow dog or a good show dog, it helps with the breeding side of it, that you can look back on the breeding and then you maybe want to breed with that breed. So yeah, a lot of people do have their own way of naming hounds, even if it's something as simple as naming it after just a name, just like Sam, Bob, Jack, Fred, that just a simple name. Others, like to use a non-de plume at the start, like Paul does, and Lee will explain that all his dogs had their own non de plume as well.
Yeah. So we never used to have any kind of an affix for the hounds at all. So when my father and myself were training hounds, there was a variety of different names for the hounds. However, when I kind of took over the reins from my dad after he'd suffered a stroke, I decided I wanted to have an affix, and I was born and raised in Denton Home in Carlisle. So my affix was born out of that, which was Denton. So the first hound, obviously, after my father's stroke was Denton Future. And then they all have some, the second part of that name all has some significance to something that, probably is irrelevant, but that's kind of how. And I think people looking in as well kind of understand who those hounds belong to, which, hounds, which kennel, which stable they come from, similar to what they have in horse racing, greyhound racing and other things where they have some of those affixes as well. So people who follow the hounds, they'll think, that would be one of Andy Horn's hounds, or that's one of Paul Airy's hounds, knowing what that is. So others just go for, very bizarre, different names for them. And, they all have to have a kennel name. So something that you call them, something that you shout on the catch, and then they'll have an official registered name, which is, identifies that hound for betting purposes as well.
So, Lee, at the end of the dog's career, I guess lasts, 4 or 5 years maybe, or maybe longer, you can tell me, but what happens to that dog then?
They can be kept for breeding, they can be kept as pets, but we do have the Lakeland Trail Hound Welfare, who are a registered charity who do an amazing job working with the Dogs Trust and other partners to enable the rehoming of trail hounds at the end of their racing careers, or for hounds that, for one reason or another weren't successful in their racing careers during their life, and they go on to have wonderful longer lives as hounds that either lie on the sofa or some of them go on to do other canine sports, like to bike shore or canicross or all other things as well. So I think it's key to the continuation of sport that dogs at the end of the career have consideration as well, because that was obviously something that's been very poignant in the likes of greyhound racing and other things, where they have similar available to them. So I think it's great work that they do and how they support us.
Yeah, that's good to know. Question for all of you now. I mean, this is, such a traditional sport. For a lot of you, it's kind of in your blood. But how difficult is it to kind of sustain this sport and get new people interested in it and make sure that it's got a future?
I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that we've gotten as an association. It can be quite difficult for new people to come in and start with the sport. We've had a couple of successes over the last couple of years where we've got some new young members come in, and they've thoroughly enjoyed the sport. They've thoroughly enjoyed getting a win or two, which has spurred them on, and they've made a lot of new friends and helped a lot of other people already in the sport. But it is quite a challenge to get new people in. We do have a lot more older members that obviously will eventually come out of the sport. So it is a bit of a challenge. We do need to be thinking a bit more creatively, I think, about how we attract new members coming in, and whether that's looking at schemes of introducing them to existing members who own dogs, and they can help those members, because it can be quite a tricky sport to get involved, and to the hardened hound trailers, starting off with a brand new pup can be quite challenging.
I think what we're trying to do also, Jane, and we're trying to use all aspects of the new social media that we have to our hands now. So obviously we've got podcasts like yourself, websites, Facebook, YouTube. So we're trying as an association to spread the word, and obviously podcasts like today are a massive help, and any information that anybody needs on owning a hound. It's not an experience where there's some hounds and some pups are thousands of pounds. People will be very surprised to know that to pick up a well-bred pup is around about 150, maybe £250 maximum. So it's not it's not an expensive hound to or a pup to buy in relation to other types of breeds where people pay thousands of pounds. And I've always said for that type of money, £150 to £250 to buy a well-bred pup, the reward you get over the next 5-6 years watching them run is equal to nothing, to be honest with you. So it's just getting that message out there. Obviously, training a hound is not a lot different to people owning a dog. They walk it every night, just like we do, and they feed it. So it's just educating people, and like Fiona says, we have been successful in attracting new people to the sport. And the more we get the message out there, and the more we spread our word over our different platforms, hopefully we can encourage people to get involved in the sport.
Has anybody else got any views on this and what the future's going to be and how you're going to tackle it?
If anybody was interested, if they got on the website, Fiona, our secretary, and what have you, we would certainly be there to help. It would be possibly the way forward is that we will partner them, as Fiona's maybe said, we partner them with somebody who has hounds that lives near them, and then they can. And I think if they go to the hound trails with them over a period of time, by attending the hound trails, you learn a lot. You talk to everybody. Everybody's got an opinion, and everybody will give you their opinion. And most people, and if not everybody, will try and help. And also possibly that their first dog would be maybe a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old that they've been able to purchase from maybe a friendship that they've struck up with a hound trailer, so that they can attend the trails with their own dog. That would be a way forward.
Yeah, so a bit of mentoring really is what you're sort of talking about here, which be good, I suppose, because if people come in fresh to it and they haven't got the family roots that you've perhaps all got, that it might be a bit intimidating to try and break into that circle. So it would be a good way to get an entree into it, wouldn't it? To kind of have a mentor.
It is a novelty to people, and it's creating that turning that novelty into an interest where, somebody would decide that they're going to look at owning and training a hound, and those, that transfer from viewing that and going to the events like yourself at Grassmere and others to see this unique, amazing sport that we have in the county. How do we then get that into people actually having a greater interest, becoming an owner on a dog? So maybe an established trainer owning that for them and being involved in that hound, and then becoming a member, slipping, catching the hounds and being involved in handling them on the day and becoming involved. It's how we make that an easy route in with what sometimes on the face of it can look like it's not a closed shop, but it's something that it's hard to get that initial route in. So it is hugely challenging. There's so many other attractions out there as well, which don't take as much effort, I suppose. I've two sons, 13 and 11, who really love the hounds. They love being around the hounds. They love walking the hounds, taking them out, spending time with them, but have no real great interest in the event, the actual trails and going to the trails, because it's a huge piece of time away from their friends, away from their other interests, football, rugby, judo, all of the other things that they do, and unfortunately away from the electronic devices, Xboxes and all of the other things that children have. So it's looking at how we can make it as attractive as possible. But yeah, there's no quick fix. It's something that we're evolving as as an enabling group as well, to try and promote the sport and bring people into the sport as best we can.
Sounds to me that any parent that wants to get their child away from their Xbox and their computer games should actually get into hound trailing and get them out in the fresh air and some exercise in the beautiful countryside. That might be a good way forward. So finally, when is the next race that people can go and see? What's the next thing in the calendar for you all?
Well, the official March trials start on the 1st of March. and that's for the whole of March. It's just really the start of getting the pups running as in bigger groups, and then the official championship trails start on the 1st of April, and there'll be venues across the association. All the details are on the web page, on the fixture list, which is updated on a daily basis, and it gives you the times, the dates, the times, the locations, and the different grades that are available at that venue.
And what's the URL for the website, Fiona? Is it the Hound Trailing Association website that this is on?
Yeah. houndtrailingassociation.com.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
so that's where people should
there.
go to actually get their information and plan where they're going to go and see this. And if they want to contact you to get involved in any way, I guess that they just find your details on there.
Yeah, the details are on the webpage. And our first major trail is on the first, well, it's on May Day. And then we have a series of big events throughout the year. But there's, as I say, from the 1st of April, the trails start, the championship trails start.
So thank you very much for your time. I think that's really been a good insight into hound trailing and how people can get involved. Is there anything else that any of you want to add, just as a final wrap up to that, message to people who are sitting there thinking that this could be something they want to take up?
Yeah, just have a look at the website. Get our telephone numbers. Give us a ring. We'll have a chat. Or if it's later on in April, May, when the better weather comes, come to Hound Trails and ask about the Hound Trails. Everybody there will want to talk about their dogs. You'll be very welcome.
Yeah, and just on the back of that, if anybody wants to get a further insight, please go onto YouTube. There are quite a lot of videos from the archives down the years. So if you go into YouTube and type Hound Trailing, you'll see some of our members from down the years, how the sport is ran. You'll get action photos of the hounds actually out on the course. So have a look at YouTube and see what it's all about. And like Paul and Fiona have said, then please visit our houndtrailingassociation.com website, where all our contact details are on there. And, we welcome any new members with open arms.
Yeah, thank you. I'm thinking that it would be really appropriate to end this podcast as we began it, with a final word from Glenys. So here's what she had to say.
Hound trailing is a great outdoor sport for young and old alike. Plenty of fresh Cumbrian air and wonderful countryside to visit from fells to fields. It is an exciting sport, as anyone will tell you. When their dogs are coming home, the enthusiasm is infectious.
So what do we think? Are you keen to walk in my footsteps and experience this sport for yourself? Of course you can get a feel for it on YouTube, but there's nothing like taking in the scene in the glorious Cumbrian landscape, whilst perhaps tucking into a hot dog from a catering van and wrapping a warming scarf around the neck to keep the breeze from the fellsides at bay. Maybe you'd like to get involved with this sport, or maybe, get involved with some of the organisation of it, as there seems to be a lot to do, as we've heard. You could become part and parcel of what sounds like a brilliant social circle, couldn't you? But I'll leave it up to you to decide. For my own part, I'm going to be embarking on what I think will be a very emotional bit of poodling around shortly, but I should bring you news of that in probably March time, I think. Another episode will be winging its way to you in February, so you can look out for that, or of course you could subscribe. In the meantime, please do take good care of yourself, and remember, as I always tell you, that life is much more fun when you're poodling around.